Today we are taking a look at the Doctor Strange fighter from the Unmatched games. Now, Doctor Strange is one of the Marvel fighters from the Unmatched Brains and Brawn set, along with She-Hulk and Spider-Man. But we have Doctor Strange, a physician, but also a master of the mystic arts. So we get this great mini here of Doctor Strange, like, levitating over a poof of smoke. We're going to take a look at Doctor Strange and Wong here. Doctor Strange is a ranged fighter with a health of 14 and a move of 2. His sidekick Wong is also ranged, so this is double ranged. His special ability is Dark Pact. After each combat, if Doctor Strange played a card, you may deal 1 damage to him. If you do, put that card on the bottom of your deck and draw 1 card. The big takeaways on this are after each combat, which means on both attacks and defense, Doctor Strange can do this, and it does specifically mention Doctor Strange, which means that Wong does not get this ability. It is only Doctor Strange. So we'll start with Doctor Strange here, with this card here, the Winds of Watomb, an attack of 4/3 copies. After combat, your opponent places Doctor Strange in a starting space. Place the opposing fighter in another starting space. All players shuffle their decks. Well, this gets pretty crazy here. We got people going into starting spaces. So what are starting spaces? Well, starting spaces are going to be these spots here that have the numbers on them. And we got clarification that a starting space is any of the starting spaces on the board, whether somebody started on that space or not. Like in a 1v1, you would only be starting on number 1 and 2 spaces, but 3 and 4 would be available for this. But your opponent gets to place you in 1, which is pretty crazy. But then you get to place them in 1, which can be pretty weird. And when your opponent starts choosing things for you, that could go anyway. All players shuffle their decks. Okay, why is this interesting? Well, because of Doctor Strange's ability with being able to place a card on the bottom of your deck. If you play Winds of Watomb, after sticking a card on the bottom of your deck, well, it's no longer, well, not necessarily on the bottom of your deck. It could be anywhere in the deck now that you shuffled. So that will let those cards that you stick in there potentially come along a lot sooner than they normally would. There's a number of fighters that get to put things on the bottom of their deck or an opponent's deck, so shuffling things around can really mess around with that. Go with a defense card here, Mists of Munipor. This is a defense of 2. There are 3 copies. Immediately discard your opponent's card. They reveal cards from their deck until they reveal an attack or versatile card they can play. They play that card and randomly put the rest of the revealed cards on the bottom of their deck. So right here's another place where we've got cards going on to the bottom of decks. Once you play Wind of Watomb, those revealed cards could show back up again. So that's an interaction that these cards can have with each other. Basically going to just pull a card. The next card that they could play. Now some things on that. This can be an attack or versatile card that comes off of theirs that they can play. It has to be a card that fighter could play. So if it was the hero that played it, a sidekick card would not work. And vice versa, a sidekick playing it couldn't play a hero's card. That wouldn't be one that they could play. So you'd keep going until you find another one. One weird question that people had on this is what happens if there are no more cards in their deck that they could play? And the answer is that you go a little bit differently than how this is worded. Just the original card they played would be the one that could go. And you were just like praying to the RNG gods with this one here. I think most of the time you get some card that would be either just a neutral switch or just not what they wanted to play. But you could have something nasty come up, so it can be good or bad. It's kind of like Winds of Watomb, that both of these are really, they can be pretty volatile on if they're good for you or not. Next we have a versatile 3 copies of this, 7 Sons of Cinnibus. If the value of this card is above 7, ignore its value. Well, it's a 3. How could it be above 7? During combat, you may blind boost this card up to 2 times. So this is going to be an interesting one here, that we're going to have 3 cards in a row that we've got to get some sort of clarification on. How does this blind boosting up to 2 times work? And the answer is, you are deciding before you look at any of the cards if you're blind boosting 0, 1, or 2 times. You get to look at their defense or their attack, and then you get to decide. And so there may be a reason for you not to want to blind boost. You can blind boost 1 time, and 1 time you know you're not going to go over 7 because he doesn't have anything that will bring it over. But as far as going over 7, you basically have to grab one of the 3s out of the deck and either a second 3 or one of the 2s. Chances are, most of the time, if you blind boost twice, you are not going over 7. But you do have that potential for it to happen, and it can go badly. Now also remember, you can put cards back in your deck with your ability. You may have dropped some boost values back in there. Also remember, related to the ability, any card that you blind boost away, you cannot grab back with Dark Pact. Cloak of Levitation. This is a versatile of 2. During combat, if Doctor Strange is adjacent to the opposing fighter, ignore the value of your opponent's card. So this is kind of like a versatile highway robbery that depends on adjacency. A defense card against a melee, this is going to be very good because most of the time you're just going to be ignoring the value. It would have to be an offensive cancel that would hurt you there. It's not as good against ranged. You got to make sure that they get next to you there. As an attack, as long as they stay adjacent to you, which this is a during combat effect, so most of the time, if they start adjacent, you're still going to be adjacent. But Doctor Strange is not always going to be adjacent. And if it's not canceled, you can pretty much drop 2 damage in on them, which can be pretty good. Going into some of his schemes, Eye of Agamotto, shuffle your hand into your deck, draw 5 cards, gain 1 action. So once again, we're looking at, you're just letting RNG work for you here. What 5 cards are you getting out of your deck? Who knows? Could get the same ones back in there because you do shuffle your hand into your deck. Now also notice that you are drawing 5 cards out. If you had like 6 or 7 cards in your hand, you would actually be putting a few back into your deck. If you have less than 5, then you're actually essentially drawing and getting some more cards in your hand. So we're seeing a number of these cards here. Mist of Munipor, Winds of Watum, 7 Sons of Cinnibus, and Eye of Agamotto. There's a lot of just like, you're doing something and you're going to see what happens. And the results may or may not be good for you. No, really, I'm a doctor. Reveal a card from your hand, put it on top of your deck. Doctor Strange or a friendly fighter adjacent to him recovers health equal to that card's boost value. So you're basically pulling one out of your hand and sticking it on top of your deck, so you know you're going to draw that right away. Also, putting a card on the top of your deck can play into this blind boosting that you get here. And you also notice the way this is worded here, Doctor Strange or a friendly fighter adjacent to him. So most of the time in 1v1, that is going to mean you're either healing Strange or Wong. In a 2v2 or co-op game, a friendly fighter could be anybody else on your team, and that could be any fighter, including fighters that do not have healing in their deck. So this is a big deal, being able to heal somebody else. We have Wong's card here, 3 copies of a versatile 2, Steadfast Disciple. If Wong is adjacent to the opposing fighter, deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter and draw 1 card. So once again, this is probably going to be more of a defense thing against melees, although it's only a 2, so it's not going to do a lot. So Wong is going to take some hits if that's what he's defending with. Rings of Raggador. 3 copies of this. We are into our innies here. If you won the combat, your fighter and each friendly fighter adjacent to them recover health equal to the damage dealt. So this is the fighter that played it, and all of them adjacent to it. So this is going to be a little bit different than No Really I'm a Doctor, which only will heal one. So that could be Strange or Wong that played it. And that would be, once again, in 1v1s healing Strange or Wong. In 2v2s and co-op, this could be healing anybody out there. Once again, healing fighters that don't have healing in their deck, which is a crazy thing. Some other things to take about this here. If you won the combat, and it's going to be, they recover health equal to the damage that was dealt from this. So one thing to think about this is over dealing damage. If you throw this into a 1 health sidekick and they take it undefended, that means you dealt 4 damage to them even though they are only a 1 health sidekick, and you would be recovering 4 for whoever played it and everybody adjacent. So that can be a really, really big deal there if you manage to throw this undefended into a 1 health sidekick, or into any sidekick whose health has gotten down very, very low. Next, we have Bolts of Balthakk, which we have 4 copies of. 4 copies is always interesting. That means they want this thing to show up in your hand a lot. It's an attack of 2. During combat, you may blind boost this card. After combat, if you won the combat, gain an action. So you can blind boost this. So along with 7 Sons of Cinnibus, you get Bolts of Balthakk, which that's like 4 cards that can blind boost. This is 3 right there. That can boost. You could be double blind boosting. So that's potentially like 10 cards that you could be blind boosting. And that is not taking into effect recurring either Balthakk or Cinnibus and playing it again. That's why this being able to put cards back on the deck is an important thing, because you're going to be blind boosting so much that you really need to be able to put cards back in your deck. Master of Camouflage. This is an any, reversal of 2. If Doctor Strange and Wong are adjacent, this card's value is 4 instead. Well, hey, keep them adjacent to each other. That's great. You do have some cards here, Ring of Raggador, No Really I'm a Doctor, that makes you want to keep these guys adjacent. So probably going to be spending a lot of time with them adjacent to each other anyway. And lastly, we get 2 copies of Feint. You know, good old Feint. Reversal of 2, cancel all effects on your opponent's card. He only has 2, but yeah, he's got that ability. So let's go ahead and talk about what we saw here. Once again, got all this blind boosting that's going on. You know what cards you're putting back into your hand with the blind boosting, so that can help you get some numbers in there, particularly like No Really I'm a Doctor, which lets you put a card back on top of your deck. Well, let's talk about the ability itself here. Well, first of all, these are going to be cards that Doctor Strange plays in combat. So, schemes are not combat cards. So, No Really I'm a Doctor and I have Agamotto cannot be recurred. Additionally, only Doctor Strange can do that, so Wong's Steadfast Disciple will never be put back into your hand. And additionally, any of these innies here that end up being played by Wong will not be able to put back into the deck because Wong can't do that. So it has to be Strange that plays them for that to happen. So we're going to look at what cards are going to be good to put back into your deck. First of all, here we're going to go grab Rings of Raggador here, because if we're able to get some healing off with this, I mean, if you get any healing off with this, playing it as Strange, you definitely take the damage and put it back in there. You may even take it if you don't heal, just to stick it back in there and try to get it again later. This is just too good of a card. Downsides to this is that it is only a 1 boost value, so if Balthakk or Cinnibus get it, you do not get a lot of good boost value out of it. Obviously, I think Feint, depending on the matchup, there are certain matchups where having a bunch of Feints and recurring that is going to be a big deal. You may want to go ahead and bring those back. And that's if Wong ended up not having to use it. You might have to use feints to keep Wong alive, which is why I think you go ahead and you bring that back any chance you can with Strange. There could be a good argument to bring back Master of Camouflage, because that could be 4, and while blank fours are good. They're not bad. They're pretty good. I think Cloak of Levitation, this is another one that I think you are taking this back here. I mean, if you throw this out here and they ended up throwing something huge at you on an attack, and you soak up like a 6 or something, you soak up like a log or a beast form or something, you go ahead and you take the 1 damage and put this card back in there. Absolutely. I think every time you do that, man. These other ones, I don't know. Only reason you'd be putting those back in there is going to be for the boost values. I don't see a lot of reasons to put Winds of Watum back in there. It's just kind of strange. It's just kind of a weird card. As well as Munipor, maybe Mists. These guys you would bring back mainly to just be boost value for you, because that's your 2s and 3s right there. So, you'd rather these guys be dropped in there to be blind boosted than your other stuff. But yeah, so these are like the ones I really think. I think Raggador is pretty much a must, because that's just healing, and you take damage to use that, so you just got to have healing. Feint is always good. Master of Camouflage is one of your better defenses, as is Cloak of Levitation. I think you always take those back. And maybe you just grab some of these others to get boost values in there, or if you think you're going to need it to be able to deal the damage. If you know you're not going to have a whole lot of damage left, and you play a 7 Suns late, maybe you need to grab one of them back again. So anyway, we can see a few things here. Doctor Strange is going to be very, very strong in 2v2 because of that healing that he has. And that's really quite crazy. You see that he is going to have a lot of RNG dependent stuff in there. A lot of these are just kind of doing something and hoping that it goes well. A lot of them, most of the time it will, but there's potential for some of these cards to turn around pretty nasty on you. And knowing what cards to bring back with your ability is always a big and crazy thing. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and a like. You can go down into the comment section and let me know any thoughts that you have about it down there. And you can also subscribe to my channel to make sure you catch all the videos I post so you don't miss anything. This is Point Extra G, and we'll see you around next time.